If you're considering buying a Portastudio or other multi-track cassette recorder, the options can be confusing. To help you choose a unit that's right for you, I'm going to show you how to break down the specifications of any MCR into 5 key areas. So, why might you want my opinion on this? This channel is themed around repairing and using multi-track cassette recorders. I've repaired and recorded with upwards of 200 MCRs. That's more than 40 different models, 6 different manufacturers. Yeah, so I hope I can give you a good idea of what to look for. If you're interested in what the usual procedure is for getting an MCR and taking it from being a little bit ill to being fixed, I just did an interview with Travis Raab where I talk about my process for fixing these units. So I will put a link to that video down in the description. So let's start with those 5 vital statistics. Those are 1. Size and weight. 2. Speed and noise reduction. 3. The number of inputs and the number of tracks that you can record simultaneously. 4. The facilities that you're going to have for equalization and using external effects devices. And 5. Whether individual tape outs are included. So let's go back through those. Number 1, the size and weight of the units. What you're going to find is when you're looking around at these, regardless of the manufacturer, there's going to be some sort of trade-off between portability on one hand and complexity on the other. Units that are more expensive tend to be larger and more complex and harder to carry around. So even if you've got a budget that allows you to buy like a really big unit that's got like a really fancy mixer and loads of bells and whistles, if you have only got a small footprint on your little desk that's crammed with other noise boxes, you might want to go for a simpler unit for that reason. Also consider whether you're going to be moving this around at all. There are some units out there which have the label Portastudio on them which aren't actually all that portable. Like really you'd need to put them in the back seat of a car. It would be a hard push to put them on carry-on luggage, much less like a rucksack or take it on a bike or something. Second big category to consider, and that's the speed and the noise reduction scheme. And something you want to think about here is like, what are your expectations of how this is going to sound? Because I hear 2 categories of disappointment from people who've bought these things. There are people who thought this was going to sound really, really hi-fi and are kind of disappointed that it's only a little bit hi-fi. And then there's people who thought it was going to sound like instantly lo-fi and grungy and really hissy, and then they get hold of something and actually it sounds a lot better than they expected to. So the thing to understand is that there's basically 2 speeds, high speed or low speed. You're going to have units that are either equipped with Dolby or DBX noise reduction, but you're not going to have Dolby and DBX on the same unit. So if you're wanting something really lo-fi, you want low tape speed and you want a unit that either has no noise reduction or where you can turn the noise reduction off. If on the other hand you're looking for something that goes some of the way towards the sort of fidelity that you would expect from, I don't know, like a reel-to-reel tape recorder, then you definitely want one that has high speed, and you probably want to have the option of noise reduction as well, because that is going to widen your dynamic range. It's going to make the hiss seem quieter. Selecting your unit based on tape speed and noise reduction is also important for compatibility reasons. So that could be maybe you've got like old demos that you recorded years ago and you want to be able to digitize those, or maybe you're collaborating with someone who also has a multi-track cassette recorder. In those cases, really you want to have the same tape speed and noise reduction scheme as on the old recordings or as your collaborator. If you start to mix up tape speeds, you're going to get things sounding like the Chipmunks, like really, really high, or like you're on ketamine, like really low. The effect of mixing up your noise reduction schemes can be kind of insidious. Like it'll work, it won't damage anything, but you'll get nasty sort of pumping artifacts if you try and play back a Dolby encoded recording on a DBX machine or vice versa. And likewise, if the recordings were made without noise reduction, then you should be trying to play them back on a unit which has no noise reduction or which you can turn the noise reduction off. The third aspect, the number of tracks that you can record simultaneously and the number of inputs. This is really dependent on how you're going to work. If you're just using this as a sort of audio sketch pad and you're going to be building things up one layer at a time, like mono drum machine and then a synth on top and then a bass guitar on top and then vocals, for instance, then really you can get away with even the most simplest MCRs that were ever made. If, however, you're wanting to do anything like several microphones simultaneously or several people playing at the same time, then it's going to be much more important to you that you can record multiple tracks simultaneously. If you're going to be making quite complex arrangements, you might also want to consider whether the unit will bounce tracks. Most units do allow you to bounce tracks, but the very simplest units on the market will not allow you to do that. Considering EQ and effects facilities, I think a lot of people who want to release a recording that they've made on an MCR are probably going to want some kind of like send effect or insert effect capability. But if you're just using it as a sketchpad, then maybe you can get away without having the ability to blend effects with the recorded signal after recording. The equalization tends to be either 2 or 3 band. You'll either have high and low shelf or high-low and a parametric mid. Usually you're looking for a larger unit before you get control over the mid-range. Some of the smallest units on the market will have no EQ at all, and so it'll be dependent on tone controls or EQ built into the instruments that you're recording in order to control that sound as you record it. And the fifth of those things is, does this have individual tape outs? I realised as I was editing that maybe people don't know exactly what I'm talking about, the difference between line outs and tape outs. Any MCR that you buy is going to have outputs like this. And really what that is the left hand and the right hand side of the signal that's coming out of your mixer. However, some units also have tape outs. These are direct outputs from the cassette itself, so anything that was recorded to track 1 comes out of this socket, anything that was recorded on track 3 comes out of this socket. Most people in this day and age, although they may be recording to an analog master or retaining their cassettes, their master recordings, they're going to want to get some sort of capture of that sound into the digital domain. Now, if you're content to do all of your mixing in the box within the Portastudio and just capture a stereo file into the digital domain, then it doesn't really matter whether you have individual tape outs or not. But a lot of people are going to want to do some sort of mastering or mixing in the digital domain after they've made the analog recording. The problem that you might come up against if you try and do that in separate passes, like record tracks 1 and 2 out the left and right, and then in a second pass record tracks 3 and 4 on the left and right output, and then try and line those up in a digital audio workstation, is that there will be little inconsistencies because of changes in the motor speed. And you can work around that. You can use algorithms to pitch stretch the digital file, but that compromises the digital file and it's extra work. So if you're definitely going to be working in that way, I would say restrict your choice to units where there are individual tape outs. That way you can capture individual mono stems. Those 5 categories don't cover all of the facilities that you can get on a Portastudio. For instance, there's sync, there's MIDI, there's digital rehearsal. Some units have built-in digital effects, but you're going to find if you need something like that, actually your choices are going to be very limited. I've glossed over some of these topics. I do plan at some point to follow up with really deep dive videos explaining the different aspects of what you to look for in a Portastudio. Like for instance, the differences in mixers. So one video that I intend to make at some point is just talking about all the differences and permutations in mixer technology that we see bundled up in these multitrack cassette recorders. So stay tuned for that. Although I haven't talked about specific models in this video, I'm about to start work on a tier list where I rate and rank every Tascam Portastudio ever made. And in future I may do similar video for all Fostexes, though at the time of making this video I've covered some Fostex stuff, some Yamaha stuff, but I'm much less knowledgeable about those brands than I am around Tascam. If that sounds good, check the description, because maybe by the time you're watching this I've made the video and there's a link there, or please consider subscribing to the channel. I hope this was helpful. If there's anything else that you're not clear on, get at me in the comments. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon.